Hey guys, and welcome back to a brand new video and another one covering some more F1 2018 news. This time, some more screenshots that I've dropped yesterday. This is courtesy of Game Reactor, a Dutch website, I believe, for video games. I'll leave a link down below and credit in the description if you guys want to go check them out for yourselves. But I've got these screenshots from their website, and I've got to say, more great content here and also more proof that F1 2018 is better looking than ever before. In this video, we're actually going to cover the classic cars a bit because I didn't mention them last time I did a screenshots video. This time I am, because there has been some news since the last time I made a video about this, and I think it's only fair that I do cover it. So straight away, delving into the first image, we have a selection of cars here going through, I believe, which is Cop's Turn 1 at Silverstone, or the old Turn 1, should I say. And a nice little mix of cars now. Basically, it was announced this week that Co-Masters, along with the classic cars that have already been announced, we now have a flurry of cars from the 70s and also the 80s. So we're going to have a nice mix of also non-turbo and also turbo-powered beasts from the way back in the day, with also some potential turbo lag, which will be pretty damn cool. In this picture, from what I can see, we have the 1979 Ferrari. I believe that's the 1984 McLaren that was used, and also we have a Lotus from the mid-70s. I want to say 78 Lotus, something around there, with the John Player Special version livery. Now, the actual John Player Special advertisement won't be on the car because tobacco is banned in Formula 1, but they've made it to look as close as possible to the real thing. But this was one of the better screenshots. Really like this one, and overall that Ferrari as well, looking really nice. Them really nice fat rear tyres. This car famous, I believe, because in 1979 it was driven by the once legendary Gilles Villeneuve and also Jody Scheckter. So a very good driver lineup there. But in terms of the next picture that we move on to, we now have another car, the 1976 Ferrari, slightly older than the one we just saw before. Similar in terms of looks. I can't exactly remember who's piloting this car, but another very nice car. And another good option for us to choose, honestly, drive the classic car options. As we now move on to the third image, this is what I was talking about. We have the Lotus, very nice car, an absolutely legendary car, the black and gold livery, absolutely timeless, and everybody recognises this car going, I believe, through turns 1 and 2 at Interlagos. As we now move on to image number 4, and I think this car on the right-hand side is not a McLaren, it's something else. Dare I say, I think it's driven by James Hunt. We also have a Lotus from the 1980s. That I'm going to guess that's Senna's Lotus from 1985. The one on the right, I don't think it's a McLaren. I want to say it's like Hesketh or something. I'm not 100% sure, but I believe it might be the car that James Hunt might have driven. But again, more cars, and we've already seen about 5 different cars so far in this video. As we now move on to the next screenshot, we have the returning 1992 Williams, infamous for its active suspension, driven by Nigel Mansell and Riccardo Patrese. I believe this could be either at Paul Ricard or Sochi, based off of the blue runoff area strip on the right-hand side. And again, another very nice quality image there. As we move on to the next one, we have the 2004 Ferrari, my personal all-time favourite F1 car, returning to the game, along with what you can see there, which is the 2007 McLaren. You can see the 2007 Ferrari on the right hand side there in the edge of your screen, and also the 2006 Renault towards the back of the picture there. And I believe this, I want to say, might be Monza Turn 1, or potentially, I don't know why I'm getting a feeling it might be Mexico. But again, really good images, nice quality, and good to see the returning cars. And finally, we do have one of the newer cars that was announced for this year's game, which I didn't mention in the last video, but it's looking absolutely fantastic, especially in this image. It's the Williams from 2003, driven by Raul Schumacher and Juan Pablo Montoya, the V10 Beast, and one that was a very nice car indeed, and one that I'm actually very much looking forward to driving, and curious to see exactly how that V10 BMW sounds like. But a very nice image here, once again at Silverstone, based off of the black curbs you can see on the image there. And then finally, we have the biggest and the most important one, in my opinion, of the bunch, a classic car that, even though it's under the classic car category, in inverted commas, it's still a relatively recent car, and one that is, quite competitive. So it's going to be quite an enjoyable one to drive, and that is the Brawn GP from 2009, driven by Rubens Barrichello and Jenson Button, the World Championship winning car that dominated the season. And here we have it in all its glory around Mexico, looking absolutely fantastic. The white and sort of fluorescent yellow colour scheme with the wheel covers, which I thought was a really nice detail, the fact they kept them on there, keeping the wheel covers in the yellow colour there. And the second image is the one that really looks nice. You can see in all its glory the Brawn from its side, looking absolutely fantastic. And that is one car that I cannot wait to actually get racing with, because that car, with the Red Bull that we have from 2010 on the classic cars, and then also the 2008 McLaren, the 2007 Ferrari, 2006 Renault, you can have quite a nice consistency now in terms of the years. We go from, I believe, 2002, because we have the 2002 Ferrari on the game in 2017. We have all the way from 2002 cars up to 2010. So we have 8 years or 9 years of F1 there in terms of F1 cars on classic cars. So overall, a very nice touch from Codemasters and a nice bit of continuity over the classic car period. But anyway, that's enough of the classic content, guys, and we're now going to move into the more interesting images, in my opinion, and that is the current season of Formula 1, and we're going to kick things off with this absolutely phenomenal image of the Williams at Hockenheim. In the wet conditions, you can see here, I think it's Hockenheim based off of the grandstand. This looks like the final corner / maybe into turn 1, and you can see I think he's racing against potentially a Toro Rosso based off of the end plate on the left hand side, and this is the Williams of Sergei Sorokin. Once again, for those that don't know, the Williams doesn't have the red stripe because alcohol advertisement is not allowed in F1 games. So for those of you that don't know, now you know. That's why the Williams is only light blue and dark blue when it comes to the martini stripes. But the Williams looking absolutely fantastic. Shading, the way the pictures look in terms of the mistiness in the ambience, the way the trees fade away in the distance looks really, really good this year. I mentioned it in the last video, they definitely seem to have helped and done a better job with the mist and the way you look at long distances, and it sort of loses the quality of the image the further you look away. As we move on to the next picture now, we have the Sauber Alfa Romeo of Marcus Ericsson at Spa going through Rouge, I want to say, based off of where the picture is taken, because you can see turn 1 in the distance. And what's quite unique about, not unique, but what's quite telling about this image, I'm a little bit disappointed because this is something that I've seen from past F1 games, which I can still see a little bit of in this one. From a distance, the image looks fine if you look at it in small. If you look at it in full screen, you can see the entire sort of side pod engine cover area, the way the shading looks. For me, it looks a bit too white, light, so to speak. It should be more saturated. You should be able to see the red more, and also a nicer color of white and a lot more darker shadows in that area of the car, in my opinion, because the sun isn't shining on that part, it's shining on the other side of the car. So for me, that should be no reflective white surface at all. That should just be black, red and yellow, which is the color of the car, and very nice dark shadows. In this case though, there's quite a lot of reflection, which I don't really love, I've got to be honest. So a little bit concerning there, because that is something that I've seen a lot in the past F1 games, which has always sort of put me off because it's not realistic the way it looks. Also, small details here, this Sauber's definitely been through a bit of trouble, as the front wing and the front nose does have a bit of a knock and a bit of a scrape to it. So little details there that shows these cars aren't exactly in pristine condition. As we now move on to the next picture, another picture, nothing really special here to really mention, just at racing speed. I believe that's Pierre Gasly against Romain Grosjean, the two Frenchmen, and I want to say this might be Austria based off of the amount of trees in the background. Intermediate conditions though, green, even though it's sunny, green tires on the car, so potential for maybe another weather condition where the sun is shining properly, but it's still very much intermediate conditions potentially, so we'll have to wait and see. But and again, another interesting image and a nice bit of quality in terms of the lighting and the shadows and the mistiness in the background. As we now move on to one of the better images, we have the Renault. Absolutely no idea where this is. I'm going to presume it's maybe Silverstone because of the grass. We have the Renault Nico Hülkenberg, and again, this picture you can sort of notice it like the Sauber before. For me, the engine cover should be a lot darker. The black should be more apparent. It's got that sort of sheen of white. It's like a little bit of whitish color on top. I'm not really a fan of, because it shouldn't be that reflective in a shady area, because that part is where the shadows are showing. So it should be the same sort of color as what the front wing is on the end plate, where it says Renault on the left hand side. That's the sort of color it should be on the engine cover. I don't understand why it's got this sort of reflectivey look to it. So hopefully that does get improved a bit before release, because personally I find that very, not off-putting, but it's just a bit of an OCD thing I have against the F1 games. As we now move on to another image, again, the Renault here, as you can see, this time looks a lot better in terms of the colouring. The actual black, it looks like actual black, if you know what I mean. And this is at Suzuka, turns 1 and 2, going side by side with a McLaren. It looks like it's Stoffel Van Dorn, from what I can see in my little screen. And again, nothing really to comment here, just first glimpses we get of the McLaren and its papaya orange, which we'll have another look at in a moment's time. As we now move on to the next image, again, through Suzuka, turns 1 and 2, we have Sorokin holding up a bit of a holy train here with Stoffel. Hülkenberg looks like Stroll. There's a Mercedes in there actually of Lewis Hamilton, quite surprising. Whether he's lapping these guys or he's had a poor start, who knows, but Worth pointing out in this image, the actual amount of motion blur in the picture, especially in the background where the final couple of cars of Alonso and I want to say Perez are a little bit blurred out. So that's quite interesting. Maybe this game might be quite heavy on motion blur, which personally I'm quite a fan of motion blur. I think it looks quite nice and it really adds a bit of realism to it. Some people don't like it, hence the ability we have to turn it off on the settings. But personally, looks really good and I can't really complain. In terms of the next image though, we have the Red Bull again on the intermediate tyres. And you can see on the track, it looks relatively dry. I can't tell it looks like this to me from the greenish look from the lighting, unless with it being put off, but I can pretty much 95% see it's into. I can see other cars behind on the intermediates, and it looks like Silverstone to me into turn 3 where Hamilton got taken out. Sunny as anything, I can't see any water on the track. So again, like I mentioned before, a potential new weather condition maybe, because it looks a bit different. Intermediates in pretty much pure dry conditions. There's no spray being kicked up by the car, so it's quite an interesting one that may be something to take into account as you move forward towards the release, but potential there for a new weather condition. As we move on to the penultimate image, this time another beautiful shot of the Ferrari at Sochi going into turn 4, I believe it is. Kimi Raikkonen looking at the Ferrari in all of its glory there, and got to give credit, this image does look really good. Reflections look really, really nice. Color saturation absolutely on point, and the shadows look phenomenal. This is another one of them images where I mentioned in the last video, sometimes the F1 cars in the F1 game don't always look like they're planted to the ground. They're sort of hovering or floating because the shadows underneath the wheels are not done right. But in this image, you can really see they've definitely worked on it. And that car looks really nicely stuck to the ground, and the shadows underneath the tyres look absolutely perfect. So credit to Codemasters where it's due. When they get it right, I'll give them credit. So this image looks really, really good. And overall, very, very, very exciting stuff. As we move on to the final image and the best image of the lot, in my opinion, we have Lewis Hamilton, the reigning champion at Abu Dhabi. And look at this absolute masterpiece of an image, guys. The lighting in this from the background all the way to the buildings, you can see sort of blurry in the background. The motion blur on the buildings as the Mercedes is coming through the corner at turn 3, I believe it is. And also the difference in light, so how dark it is in the background to how light it is up to the top of the sky, the LED lights, and also the reflections on the Mercedes. You can tell if this was the race, you're looking at about lap 15 or 20 of 100% race, where it's not nighttime yet, but it's very dark/dusk, and the lights are on just to give that illumination necessary for the race, because there's not enough natural sunlight to give you that sort of impression that you can see the cars and the racetrack enough. So it's a very nice blend of daytime looking Mercedes with some lights to really accentuate the nice chrome detail and all the turquoise colours on the car. So a very nice image here and a very nice detail, and also another high res that we get of the Mercedes, which we haven't seen much of, and there's been a lot of questions about where has the Mercedes been. So that sort of answers a lot of the questions and exactly where the car is. So overall, guys, that's going to be it for this video. A lot of good images, a lot of good stuff here, and hopefully we get more to come in the coming weeks. I'm going to presume there might be a developer diary for this weekend, as we got one at Silverstone in the last race, and now we're going into the German Grand Prix at Hockenheim, and it is a returning track, so I'd be surprised if there's no video on the F1 2018 game regarding that. So if it does drop, you can be sure that I'll be trying to cover that as soon as it goes out. So do get subscribed for that, guys. But hopefully you have enjoyed this video. If you have, drop a like on the video. Let me know in the comments down below what you think of F1 2018. Subscribe if you're new for all the latest and breaking news on F1 2018. And finally, check out these 2 videos on screen, guys, if you have missed them. But other than that, thank you for watching. I'll see you in my next video very soon. Goodbye.